Hello everyone, this is Jungkook. Before we start, I want to know where you're listening from. Drop your country in the comments below. Maybe you think winter predictions are just about weather, just about snow falling, just about seasonal fashion or warm drinks at a cafe. Maybe you assume that someone like me, someone who has achieved success, who has lived under bright lights, who has walked stages in front of millions, doesn't worry about heating bills or food prices or the struggles that come when the cold months arrive. Maybe you think those things are distant, almost invisible for people in my position. But what if I told you that this is not about the kind of surface level inconveniences you imagine? What if I told you that this winter, something far more serious is waiting, something that will touch families everywhere, no matter who they are or where they come from? I have been lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, unable to shake off the patterns I've been watching unfold. Patterns that don't come from meteorologists, patterns that don't come from economists, patterns that don't even come from headlines. They come from observing life, from connecting dots most people overlook, until suddenly it is too late. I need to tell you this because silence feels like betrayal. If I keep this inside, knowing what's coming, I would be betraying everyone who looks to me not just as an artist, but as a person who speaks honestly about life, about struggle, about resilience. The truth is, this winter will test every family's ability to endure, to adapt, and to hold each other close in ways most are not ready for. This isn't about snowstorms or icy sidewalks. This isn't about whether your car starts in the morning. This is about survival on levels that are both practical and emotional. The prediction I need to share with you is this. This winter will bring a combination of rising energy costs, food shortages and price spikes, unstable incomes, and weakened community support systems. Together, these pressures will force millions of families that once thought themselves safe, stable, even comfortable, to make impossible choices. Choices between heating their homes, feeding their children, or staying financially afloat. Choices that could redefine how people see themselves, how they see their future, and how they see the very idea of security. When you hear me say this, I want you to understand I am not talking about apocalyptic disaster movies or some kind of dramatic end of the world vision. I'm talking about the slow, grinding weight of daily expenses climbing faster than income, about basic services becoming unreliable, about social systems being stretched past their breaking point. This is not sudden collapse. This is steady suffocation. I know this because I have been following the signals. Energy markets show strain, food production is slowing, transportation is disrupted, and social services are under pressure like never before. All these lines are moving in the same direction, toward the same conclusion. Families will feel this pain in the smallest details of their daily lives. And if they are not prepared, the consequences will shake them at their core. The first thing I've seen is energy, heating, electricity, gas, the warmth that keeps a family safe during the coldest months. Prices are rising not only because of inflation, but because of global supply disruptions and fragile infrastructure. Natural gas has climbed higher. Electricity rates in many regions are breaking records. Heating oil is scarcer and more expensive because refineries can't keep up, because transportation is clogged, because demand is surging. But the cost is not the only danger. The reliability itself is fragile. Power grids are closer to their limits than they've been in decades. That means when the temperature drops, when families need energy the most, there may not be enough to go around. Blackouts, brownouts, sudden outages, moments when homes go dark and heaters fall silent. And in those moments, this is not just about comfort. It's about medicine that requires refrigeration. It's about keeping children warm enough to stay healthy. It's about preventing vulnerable elders from suffering in the freezing dark. Then comes food. Already, groceries are straining budgets. But this winter, prices will climb higher still. Transporting fresh fruits and vegetables from warmer regions will cost more. Storage will demand more energy, which will also be more expensive. Packaged goods, preserved foods, everything that fills shelves, these too will climb because the cost of production and packaging is rising. Families that already feel the pinch when standing at the checkout will now face decisions about what to leave behind, what to sacrifice. And for many, the safety nets they once counted on, food assistance programs, subsidies, even local charities are already stretched thin. Demand is overwhelming supply. And for the first time, families who once thought they would never need such help will find themselves waiting in line, filling out forms, and admitting that they cannot make it alone. The third weight pressing down is income. Jobs that felt stable may not feel stable this winter. Hours reduced, wages stagnant, part-time workers dismissed during low-spending months. Entire industries slowed by whether construction, retail, outdoor services. Even those with steady paychecks will see those checks eaten alive by bills that are larger than last year's, by groceries that cost more, by utilities that don't forgive. The fourth shadow is the collapse of community support systems. The neighbor who once shared food, now struggling themselves. The local religious group or community center that once provided blankets and meals, now overwhelmed, unable to keep up. The extended family that used to pool resources, now counting every coin for their own survival. Isolation grows when networks of support collapse. Families find themselves alone in the storm. This isn't abstract. Last month, I visited a center that provides food and heating support to families. I sat with the director, a woman who has done this work for decades. She looked me in the eye and said, "This year is different." Normally, she said, it's the same vulnerable groups, elderly on fixed incomes, single parents with minimum wage jobs, people with disabilities. But now, it's families with two incomes, families who own their homes, families who believed they were safe. I listened as she described a couple, a teacher and a nurse. Two stable jobs, two essential roles, and yet their heating bill had risen by more than half compared to last year. Their groceries by almost the same. Childcare costs had spiked. Even with their combined incomes, they were at a breaking point. They faced a decision, keep the house warm for their children, or provide full meals every night. This was a family that had never imagined asking for help. And now they were sitting in her office, humbled, shaken, afraid. What stayed with me even more than the numbers was the shame. She told me, the hardest part is not the money, it's the shame. It's watching strong, self-sufficient parents break down because they cannot provide what they once took for granted. Fathers choosing between heating oil and medicine for their kids. Mothers trying to explain to children why dinner is smaller than before. Families sending kids to school early and keeping them late, not because of jobs, but because the school cafeteria and library are warm and safe, a place where their children can be fed and comfortable. This is what I see coming. Not just hardship, but identity shaken. People questioning everything they believed about their ability to protect their family. Parents feeling like failures, even though the failure does not belong to them. It belongs to systems unprepared for the weight they now carry. And the ripple spreads. When families stop spending beyond necessities, small businesses lose customers. Schools lose support from families who once donated or joined fundraisers. Community organizations lose volunteers too busy or too drained to give their time. A spiral begins where individual struggle becomes community struggle, and community struggle feeds back into families again. That is why I am speaking. That is why I cannot stay silent. Because what is coming is not something you can wait out with optimism or denial. What is coming demands preparation. Preparation not just of money, but of mindset, of resources, of relationship. This is not about fear. This is about readiness. Families who understand what's coming, who take small steps now, can shift from desperation to resilience. They can soften the impact. They can emerge stronger. But only if they act while there is still time. And here is a truth that might be hardest to accept. This winter will not be the end. This is not just one season. This is part of a longer shift. The cost of living, the fragility of systems, the weight on communities, these are not temporary. They are signs of a new reality, a reality that requires us to adapt. But adaptation does not have to mean despair. Adaptation can mean rediscovering skills, building new connections, finding new strength. Families that embrace this, that prepare now, will not just endure, they will transform. And so I ask you, how seriously will you take this? What changes will you make today? Not tomorrow, not next week, but today, to protect your family for what is coming. When I begin to share these thoughts, I know they can sound overwhelming. It's tempting to dismiss them, to push them aside with the idea that maybe things won't get as bad as I describe. But ignoring the storm doesn't make it go away. In fact, pretending that these pressures don't exist is exactly what makes them hit harder when they finally arrive. The truth is that families who prepare now will carry less fear later. Families who choose awareness today will carry strength tomorrow. Think for a moment about the rhythm of daily life when the cold season comes. Waking up to colder mornings, turning up the heat a little higher, running the shower a little longer because the water feels icy, driving longer distances because icy roads, slow traffic. Every one of these small details consumes more energy, more fuel, more money. And while these things might feel minor on the surface, they accumulate. They become invisible drains on budgets already under strain. By the end of a single month, the difference can feel massive, like a hole in a boat that no one saw until the water was already ankle deep. Now add to that the rise in food costs. Walk into any grocery store this winter and you'll notice it immediately. The fruits you once bought easily now carry price tags that make you hesitate. Vegetables that once filled your basket without a second thought now feel like luxuries. Even simple staples, milk, eggs, bread, rice inch upward week by week. The weight of these changes doesn't crash down in a single day. It comes quietly, silently, in small increments, until one day you realize the same paycheck that once carried you comfortably now only covers the basics, and sometimes not even all of them. This is not just about math or economics, it's about the human heart. Imagine a parent in a store holding their child's hand, saying no to something small. The child wants a snack, a treat, because every coin must be counted. Imagine that parent carrying home groceries that feel lighter, because every item removed from the cart to save money was also a little piece of comfort taken away. This is where the stress becomes emotional. This is where families start to feel the tension, not only in their wallets, but in their sense of worth, in their ability to give, in their confidence about tomorrow. I've heard stories already of people making painful trade-offs. A father deciding whether to refill his daughter's asthma inhaler or keep the house warm enough for her to sleep without shivering. A mother working extra shifts only to realize the additional income is swallowed by rising childcare costs. Young people leaving university plans on hold because tuition combined with living expenses is no longer possible. These choices are cruel, but they are becoming more common, and the weight they put on families is heavier than most outsiders realize. There's also the hidden pressure of pride. Many who have never asked for help before will find themselves at the doors of food banks, community centers, or shelters. The shame of walking into those spaces for the first time can be unbearable. People who once prided themselves on independence now feel like they're failing. But what they don't see is that they are not alone. All around them, others are quietly facing the same struggles, quietly making the same sacrifices. The silence makes the burden heavier. If people could see how many are in the same position, perhaps they would realize that what's happening is not personal failure but systemic strain. And that brings me to another layer of this prediction: the collapse of trust in the systems that are supposed to protect us. When schools cut back on programs because budgets are drained, children lose more than just extracurricular activities. They lose safe spaces, creative outlets, and community anchors. When small businesses close their doors because families stop spending, neighborhoods lose more than services. They lose connection, gathering places, and livelihoods. When local organizations stretch beyond their capacity and still cannot meet demand, families realize that the safety net they believed was there has holes too wide to catch them. These cracks in the system create something dangerous: disillusionment. People start to ask, if I can't rely on the systems I've trusted, what can I rely on? That question, left unanswered, breeds despair. And despair can fracture families from the inside out. Marriages strain under the weight of unpayable bills. Parents argue over which expense to cut, over who carries more of the blame. Children, sensitive to stress, begin to feel the anxiety themselves. And in some homes, the silence grows heavier than the arguments. Silence where laughter used to be. Silence where hope used to be. I want to be clear though. Speaking about these hardships is not the same as surrendering to them. The reason I share these patterns is because preparation changes everything. Preparation turns fear into focus. It turns uncertainty into clarity. It gives families power, even in circumstances they cannot control. So what does preparation look like? It begins with awareness, becoming conscious of every watt of electricity, every drop of fuel, every coin that leaves your hand. It means insulating not only your windows and doors, but also your habits. Replacing waste with intention, swapping comfort that costs for comfort that endures, blankets instead of higher thermostats, shared meals instead of takeout. These changes may seem small, but collectively they are armor. They are the difference between a family that collapses under strain and a family that bends but does not break. Preparation also means storage. Not hoarding, not panic buying, but careful, thoughtful storage. Shelves that carry rice, beans, pasta, canned goods, dried fruits, nuts, food that can last weeks or months, food that does not depend on daily deliveries or fragile supply chains. A family that builds this reserve now, while prices are still lower than they will be later, creates a cushion. A cushion that absorbs shocks when shortages come, when prices spike, when shelves empty faster than they refill. But perhaps the most important preparation is not material, it is relational. Families must begin talking openly about what may come. Parents must sit with children and explain in honest but gentle ways why things may be different this season. Siblings must share responsibilities, turning preparation into teamwork rather than secrecy. Neighbors must reach across fences and begin forming bonds of mutual support. Communities that prepare together do not crumble as easily as communities where each family fights alone. What I see in all of this is not just a test of survival, but a test of perspective. Winter is coming with challenges, yes, but also with opportunities. Opportunities to rediscover resilience. Opportunities to relearn skills, cooking with less, repairing instead of replacing, growing food indoors, conserving energy. Opportunities to strengthen bonds that were once taken for granted. In hardship, many families will discover their deepest capacities, the ability to endure, to adapt, to care more fiercely for one another. And that is why I share this. Not to spread panic, not to steal sleep from you, but to offer time. Time to prepare, time to act, time to transform, worry into wisdom. Because once the cold arrives, once the shortages deepen, once the prices rise beyond reach, time itself becomes the scarcest resource of all. The more I reflect on the challenges that lie ahead, the more I realize this isn't just about numbers or bills, it's about the way people's spirits will be tested. Every family will feel it differently, but the underlying truth will be the same. The safety and stability many thought they could rely on will be shaken. And when stability shakes, it shakes more than daily comfort. It shakes identity, it shakes confidence, it shakes the belief that tomorrow will be better than today. Think about what happens when a family that once considered itself stable suddenly finds itself struggling to meet basic needs. For years, maybe they've prided themselves on discipline, on hard work, on building a life they thought was unshakable. And then, almost overnight, they realize that the ground beneath them is not as firm as they believed. The mortgage is harder to pay. The bills pile faster than paychecks can stretch. The fridge feels emptier at the end of each week. That realization doesn't just hit their finances, it hits their sense of who they are. I've spoken to people who describe the emotional toll as heavier than the financial one. Parents lying awake at night, not because of the cold, but because of the crushing thought that they are failing their children. Fathers who once stood tall, suddenly breaking down in tears because they cannot give their kids the warmth or food they once provided without thinking. Mothers who carry guilt heavier than any bill simply because they had to say no to something small that once felt easy to say yes to. This is the silent battle that will unfold this winter. Hidden behind closed doors, hidden behind smiles that try to reassure children, while hearts carry the weight of quiet despair. And what makes this more dangerous is the isolation. Many families will not talk about their struggles. They will pretend, they will hide, they will carry the burden alone, out of pride, out of shame, out of fear of being judged. But silence doesn't make the burden lighter, it makes it heavier. The truth is, countless others will be fighting the same fight. If families could see that they are not alone, they would find strength in unity. But in isolation, they will feel as though they are the only ones drowning, even as thousands around them sink beneath the same tide. This is why communities matter. This is why human connection matters. Yet, even here, I see a warning. The very networks that people once leaned on, neighbors helping neighbors, relatives stepping in, community groups providing support, are themselves under strain. Everyone is being pulled tighter, stretched thinner. The hands that once reached out to lift others now tremble because they are barely holding on themselves. And so the web frays, and as it frays, families fall through the gaps that once caught them. The consequences ripple outward. When families can no longer afford extracurricular activities, schools lose funding. When parents stop shopping at local businesses, those businesses close their doors. When stress consumes households, workplaces see reduced focus, reduced creativity, reduced resilience. The cycle spins, and what begins as private financial strain becomes public social strain. Entire communities feel the weight, not just individuals. Yet within this shadow, there is still light, because moments of deep challenge are also moments when people rediscover what truly matters. When comfort falls away, clarity rises. Families remember that strength is not measured by luxury, but by unity. That security is not measured by possessions, but by resilience. That worth is not defined by wealth, but by the ability to care, to endure, to adapt. I believe this winter will force people to ask hard questions. What can I live without? What do I truly need? What matters most? For some, the answers will feel painful sacrifices they never imagined making. But for others, those answers will spark transformation. They will discover capacities they never realized they had. Skills long forgotten, suddenly revived. Traditions long abandoned, suddenly meaningful again. Bonds with family and neighbors, once taken for granted, suddenly unbreakable. Preparation here goes beyond food and energy. It extends to mindset. A mindset that refuses to break under pressure, that chooses adaptation over despair. A mindset that understands the difference between control and acceptance. You cannot control the rising price of fuel. You cannot control the global disruptions in supply chains. But you can control how you respond. You can control whether you wait passively or prepare actively. You can control whether you isolate in silence or reach out in trust. And make no mistake, preparation is not weakness. It is not paranoia. It is wisdom. It is foresight. It is the choice to meet the storm with armor rather than bare skin. Those who prepare may still feel the chill, may still face sacrifice, but they will not collapse. They will not be blindsided. They will carry a quiet strength, a strength that grows each time they choose action over avoidance. Let me tell you what I've seen when people embrace this mindset. I've seen families who began saving small amounts of food in advance, only to discover later that those shelves of rice and beans carried them through weeks when prices spiked. I've seen neighbors who formed small groups to share resources, and in doing so created not only survival strategies, but friendships that transformed loneliness into solidarity. I've seen children learn resilience by helping with small tasks, layering blankets, conserving light, helping cook simple meals, and grow into young people who understood that strength isn't inherited, it's built together. These are not dramatic gestures. They are simple, deliberate choices. Choices that create a shield against uncertainty. Choices that transform fear into focus. Choices that will separate those who endure the season with dignity from those who are broken by it. And yet, I cannot emphasize enough that this is not just a single season's challenge. What we are facing now is the opening of a longer chapter. The cost of living, the fragility of infrastructures, the strain on communities, these will not vanish when the snow melts. They are part of a larger shift, a deeper transformation in the way society functions. Families who think only of surviving the cold months will be unprepared when the same pressures continue, reshaped but still pressing in the months beyond. That is why the most powerful preparation is not temporary. It is not about getting through this winter and then forgetting the lessons. It is about reshaping habits, reshaping priorities, reshaping the way we live. If we can do that, then the hardship becomes not only bearable, but meaningful. It becomes the soil in which new resilience, new connection, new strength is planted. So here is the choice. Ignore the warnings and hope for the best, or prepare now and shape the outcome. Denial may feel easier, but it leaves you vulnerable. Preparation may feel heavy, but it leaves you ready. Which will you choose? The more I look at the patterns unfolding, the more I understand that what lies ahead will not only challenge our bodies and our wallets, but also our sense of connection. Human beings are wired to endure hardship through unity. We were never meant to face storms alone. But the way this winter approaches, many will feel the temptation to retreat, to guard what little they have, to close their doors and hearts in fear of losing more. And that instinct, while understandable, may be the very thing that makes survival harder, not easier. Think about how strength multiplies when people come together. A neighbor who has extra blankets can share with one who has none. A family with access to a generator can invite others to warm themselves during outages. A household with knowledge of preserving food can teach others the same skills. But when fear dictates silence, when shame dictates hiding, when pride dictates isolation, then resources remain fragmented. Instead of becoming a lifeline, they remain scattered, unable to lift anyone fully. I've often thought about how much of our identity today is tied to self-reliance. We live in a world that praises independence, that celebrates the idea of doing it all alone. But the truth is, none of us were ever fully independent. We rely on farmers to grow our food, workers to deliver our supplies, neighbors to maintain the communities where we live. And this winter, the illusion of independence will crumble. People will rediscover, sometimes painfully, that survival is not an individual achievement, but a collective one. Yet, there is an opportunity hidden inside this rediscovery. When systems break, when conveniences vanish, people remember what truly matters. They remember the strength of cooking a shared meal with whatever is available, the warmth of gathering together in one room to save heat, the comfort of knowing that while resources are scarce, love and solidarity remain abundant. These moments strip away distractions and remind us of the kind of bonds that cannot be bought or measured by money. But preparation must not only happen on a personal level, it must expand outward. Families must look beyond their own walls and begin to see themselves as part of a larger web of resilience. Imagine what could happen if entire neighborhoods prepared together, if households coordinated on how to share tools, how to pool food, how to watch out for the vulnerable. A crisis that breaks individuals becomes manageable when carried by many. It becomes not only survivable, but transformative. Still, I must speak with honesty. Not everyone will make these choices. Many will ignore the signs. Many will believe that because they have managed in the past, they will manage again without change. Many will underestimate the scale of the pressure until it lands directly on their doorstep. And for those families, the struggle will be sharper. It will feel like betrayal, not only by the systems they trusted, but by themselves, for failing to act when there was still time. This is why awareness is not enough. Action is required. Awareness without action is just worry. Awareness with action is strength. Each day before the cold arrives is a gift, an opportunity to make even small adjustments that could mean survival later. Adjustments that may feel uncomfortable now, but will feel life-saving later. For example, reducing energy use in ways that seem almost trivial, sealing gaps around windows, lowering thermostats by a few degrees, replacing inefficient bulbs can mean the difference between a bill that crushes a family and a bill they can manage. Building shelves of non-perishable food may seem unnecessary in the moment, but when transport slows and prices rise, those shelves become the foundation of security. Learning how to cook simple meals that require less fuel, practicing how to conserve water and electricity, creating backup plans for outages, all of these may feel like over-preparation now, but they will feel like wisdom later. I think often about the emotional dimension of preparation. It's not just about what you buy or store. It's about how you talk with your family, how you shape their expectations, how you create resilience within their minds. Children who are prepared emotionally will suffer less than children who are kept in the dark. Families who communicate openly will endure less conflict than those who hide fears until they explode. Talking about what may come does not make the future darker. It makes it less frightening when it arrives. There's also something deeply human about rituals of preparation. When families come together to stock shelves, to patch windows, to cook meals for storage, they are not only building security, they are building memory. They are creating shared experiences that say, we are in this together. We will endure this together. Those memories later will become stories of resilience, stories that inspire future generations to face their own challenges with courage. This winter, the divide between those who act and those who don't will be sharp. Not because one group is luckier than the other, but because one group chose to face reality early and the other chose to turn away. The ones who act will discover that even in difficulty, they have options. They will bend, but not break. The ones who don't will discover that waiting leaves them at the mercy of circumstances they could have softened had they only begun sooner. And beyond this winter, the lesson will remain. The families who adapt now will carry skills, habits, and mindsets that will serve them long after the snow melts. They will discover that life can be simpler, but also deeper. That resilience is not about clinging to the comforts of yesterday, but about embracing the strengths of today. They will come to see that preparation is not fear, it is respect. Respect for life, respect for family, respect for the reality of the world we live in. As I speak these words, I do not want you to hear only warning. I want you to hear possibility. I want you to hear that the struggle ahead is real, but so is the strength you have not yet tapped. I want you to hear that yes, this winter may be one of the hardest in recent memory, but it can also be one of the most meaningful, because it will strip away what is shallow and reveal what is strong, because it will take what is fragile and transform it into resilience, because it will teach that the greatest warmth does not come only from heaters or fuels, but from unity, from love, from the human spirit refusing to be broken. So ask yourself today, what steps will you take before the cold arrives? What changes will you make? Not out of fear, but out of wisdom. What conversations will you start in your family, in your neighborhood, in your community? These are not questions for tomorrow. These are questions for now. Because time right now is the most valuable resource you have. And how you use it will determine not just how you endure this winter, but how you emerge from it stronger, wiser, and more connected than before. There is a truth many avoid when they think about hardship. The struggle is never just physical. It is mental, it is emotional, and it is spiritual. A family can endure hunger for a while. They can endure cold for a while. But the heaviest burden is hopelessness. And hopelessness is what grows when people believe they are powerless, when they believe no action they take will change the outcome. That is why preparation matters so deeply. It is not only about stacking shelves or saving energy. It is about giving yourself a reason to believe you have some control, a reason to believe that you are not simply waiting to be crushed by forces too large to resist. This winter, the forces will be real rising energy bills, unstable power grids, food that costs more than last year, incomes that do not stretch far enough. But the reaction to these forces will separate those who endure from those who collapse. And endurance does not come from denial, it comes from clarity. It comes from facing the problem with open eyes and steady hands, from saying, I see the storm, but I will not stand here without shelter. I will build what I can. I will prepare what I must. Imagine the difference between two households on the same street. One has ignored the warnings, continuing life as usual. They leave their windows unsealed, their pantry half empty, their fuel tank running low. They assume they'll deal with problems as they come. The other has taken the warning seriously. They've sealed the cracks around their doors, stocked their shelves with staples, created a plan for outages. When the first storm hits, the first household feels panic. They scramble, they suffer, they begin to break down under the weight of unpreparedness. The second feels strained too, but it is a strain they anticipated, and they meet it with calm. The difference is not wealth. The difference is mindset. And mindset is something every family can choose today. I've often thought about how small actions compound into powerful protection. Lowering a thermostat by just 2 degrees and layering with blankets may not seem heroic, but across the season, it can save enough fuel to keep bills manageable. Storing food like rice, beans, lentils, pasta, canned vegetables may not look glamorous, but it can turn weeks of uncertainty into weeks of security. Teaching children the value of conserving electricity, of turning off lights, of cooking meals together instead of buying ready-made food. It may seem simple, but it plants seeds of resilience in young minds that will grow into lifelong strength. The truth is, preparation also reshapes identity. Families who prepare do not only feel safer, they feel capable. They move from being passive victims of circumstance to active builders of survival. And that shift from victim to builder is everything. It is the line between despair and hope, between fear and confidence. But preparation is not just about individual families. It extends into neighborhoods, into communities. One household with a generator can become a refuge for several. One neighbor who grows or preserves food can support others. One family who checks in on the elderly next door can prevent tragedy. Each act of community becomes a thread, and together those threads weave a fabric strong enough to hold everyone through the coldest nights. There is another truth many forget. Hardship reveals character. In seasons of comfort, generosity can feel easy. But in seasons of scarcity, generosity becomes profound. Sharing when you yourself are stretched, giving when you yourself feel the strain, that is when true community is born. This winter will test whether people retreat into themselves or extend their hands outward. And those who extend, even with little, will discover that giving creates not less, but more connection, more trust, more meaning. Yet I must also warn of the opposite. When fear becomes selfishness, when families hoard resources without thought of others, when neighbors turn away from neighbors, hardship multiplies, communities fracture, isolation deepens. Survival becomes colder, lonelier, and crueler. That is why I believe the choice each person makes between selfishness and solidarity will define not only their survival, but the survival of those around them. I want to share something I heard from a mother in one of the communities I visited. She told me about how last winter, when bills were already rising, she and several other families began cooking together once a week. Each brought what little they had. One brought vegetables, another brought rice, another brought spices. They cooked in one kitchen to save fuel and shared the meal across households. What started as necessity became tradition. Children laughed together, parents felt less alone, and suddenly the hardship became lighter. She told me, "We discovered that we were richer together than we ever were alone." That truth, I believe, will be the greatest shield against what is coming. Beyond the practical, there is also the inner preparation. People must prepare their hearts for a different rhythm of life. They must prepare to let go of certain comforts. They must prepare to accept that normal will not look the same for a while. And in that acceptance lies freedom. Fighting reality only creates bitterness. Accepting reality creates space for adaptation, for creativity, for resilience. Acceptance does not mean surrender. It means adjusting the frame. Instead of mourning what is lost, families can focus on what remains. Instead of clinging to what cannot be controlled, they can celebrate what can still be chosen. This is not easy, but it is powerful, because the mind that adapts survives where the mind that resists collapses. This winter, many will discover strengths they never knew they had. A parent will realize they can fix what they once replaced. A child will learn that joy does not require money, but imagination. A community will discover that shared struggle can create bonds stronger than years of ordinary friendship. These are the hidden gifts of hardship, the gifts that are invisible until they are forged in fire. But those gifts do not erase the pain, they simply make it bearable. And so I say again, preparation is not fear, preparation is hope. It is saying, I believe in tomorrow enough to get ready today. It is saying, my family is worth protecting. It is saying, I will not face the storm empty-handed. So, as the cold approaches, ask yourself, how will you use the days left? Will you wait, hoping circumstances will be kinder than the signs suggest? Or will you prepare, not because you fear the storm, but because you honor the life you have been given and the people who depend on you? That decision is yours. And it is a decision that must be made before the first winds howl, before the first bills overwhelm, before the first shortages appear. Because once the moment arrives, the window to prepare will have closed. When people imagine the future, they often think of spring as the moment when relief finally comes. The snow melts, the days grow longer, the cold retreats, and with it, the struggles of winter fade. But I need to be honest, the challenges we are about to face will not vanish simply because the weather warms. This winter is not an isolated season. It is a symptom of deeper changes that will continue shaping the way families live long after the frost is gone. The pressures on energy, on food, on income, on community, these are not temporary storms. They are signals of a larger shift, a reminder that the systems we have trusted for decades are no longer as stable as we once believed. And so the question becomes not only how to endure this winter, but how to adapt for the years ahead. Imagine this, a family that treats this season not as an interruption, but as a wake-up call. Instead of returning to old habits once the snow melts, they carry the lessons forward. They continue insulating their homes not only to save energy in winter, but to conserve resources year-round. They continue growing or preserving food, not only for survival, but for health, for independence, for a sense of connection to the basics of life. They continue building ties with neighbors, not only to share burdens in cold months, but to create stronger, safer, more resilient communities in every season. This is what transformation looks like. It is not about surviving once. It is about shifting the foundation so survival becomes natural, not desperate. It is about turning preparation into lifestyle, resilience into identity, adaptability into strength. Families who embrace this mindset will not only outlast the coming challenges, but will thrive in spite of them. I've often thought about how past generations lived with less and endured with more resilience. They knew how to mend, how to preserve, how to save, how to share. Modern life has offered us convenience, but it has also taken away those skills. We have become dependent on fragile systems, forgetting that our ancestors once thrived without them. This winter could be the moment when people rediscover that resilience. The moment when forgotten skills return, when resourcefulness is reborn, when communities relearn the power of standing together. But this rediscovery will not be automatic. It must be chosen. It must be embraced. Families who see this winter only as a nightmare will emerge weaker. Families who see it as a teacher will emerge stronger. Because hardship is always two things. It is pain and it is possibility. It wounds, but it also shapes. It takes away, but it also reveals. It can break or it can build. And which one it becomes depends not on the season itself, but on the choices we make in response to it. One of the most powerful choices is perspective. When families view themselves as victims of forces beyond their control, they feel small, helpless, paralyzed. But when families view themselves as participants in history, as people who are living through challenges that will define a generation, they find meaning. They realize that their struggles are not just struggles. They are stories, they are lessons, they are examples that their children will carry, that their communities will remember. The hardship becomes a kind of legacy, proof that they endured, that they adapted, that they did not surrender. And that legacy matters because the truth is, children are always watching. They are always learning, not from what we say, but from how we live. If they see fear, they inherit fear. If they see resilience, they inherit resilience. If they see despair, they inherit despair. If they see hope, they inherit hope. This winter, every family will be writing lessons into the hearts of their children. Those lessons may be painful, but they can also be powerful. There is something else hidden in these challenges, the chance to redefine success. For so long, success has been measured by abundance, more money, more possessions, more comfort. But when abundance is stripped away, people discover that success can also be measured differently. Success becomes the ability to endure without breaking. Success becomes the warmth of togetherness when material luxuries are absent. Success becomes a meal shared, a bill paid, a night endured with dignity. In many ways, this redefinition can bring more peace than abundance ever did, because it is rooted not in what can be lost, but in what can never be taken away. I think about the father who cried because he couldn't afford both medicine and heat for his child. That pain is real and it cannot be ignored. But I also think about what happens when that father finds support from neighbors, from community, from preparation. He learns that asking for help is not weakness, but courage. He learns that survival is not always solitary, but collective. And in that moment, his family gains not only warmth, but also a deeper understanding of connection. That kind of lesson, painful though it may be, can change a life forever. The bigger picture here is about more than one winter. It is about a society learning humility. For decades, many assumed that progress meant vulnerability was a thing of the past, that supermarkets would always be full, that electricity would always flow, that incomes would always rise. But the reality is, progress has limits. And when those limits are exposed, humanity must remember the truths. It once knew that resilience, not convenience, is the real foundation of life. This is why I believe the coming challenges, though heavy, may also be necessary. They remind us that we are not invincible. They remind us that we must care for each other. They remind us that the measure of a society is not how it thrives in abundance, but how it survives in scarcity. They remind us that strength is not comfort, but character. And so, as the days shorten and the cold draws near, I ask you to see this time not only with fear, but with resolve. Use the days wisely. Build your strength now, not only with supplies, but with spirit. Create bonds that will hold through the cold. Teach your children not only how to endure, but how to see challenge as opportunity. Shape your habits not only for a season, but for a future where resilience will be the most valuable wealth you can hold. When spring comes, the families who prepare will not simply breathe in relief. They will carry forward skills, habits, and wisdom that will continue to protect them long after the frost has melted. They will not only have endured the winter, they will have transformed because of it. They will walk into the new season stronger, wiser, more connected, and more alive to the things that truly matter. And that is the real prediction. Not just hardship, but growth. Not just struggle, but strength. Not just loss, but renewal. Preparation becomes real only when it translates into daily choices. Awareness alone cannot keep a home warm, cannot keep a family fed, cannot sustain a community under pressure. What matters is how that awareness shapes action-specific, deliberate, and consistent action. And these actions, though sometimes small, accumulate into shields that can protect families when the pressure rises. Energy is often the first battleground. Heating a home consumes more resources in winter than almost anything else. Many believe they cannot control their bills because the prices are set by systems beyond their reach. But the truth is, even small adjustments create meaningful differences. Insulating windows and doors to prevent drafts may seem like a simple act, but it reduces heat loss dramatically, cutting costs over weeks and months. Lowering thermostats just 2 or 3 degrees and relying on blankets or layered clothing can save more fuel than people expect. Families who prepare early by repairing leaks, sealing gaps, and ensuring their heating systems are efficient will face the cold with more confidence and fewer shocks. Electricity, too, requires vigilance. Swapping inefficient bulbs for LEDs, unplugging appliances that drain power silently, turning off lights in unused rooms, these are not symbolic gestures. Over time, they can reduce the burden on fragile grids and keep bills within reach. And when outages come, as they inevitably will for some, having flashlights, batteries, and portable chargers ready turns chaos into manageable inconvenience. Families who prepare in this way do not panic in darkness. They light a lamp, gather together, and wait with calm. Food preparation is equally essential. Prices will climb, availability will tighten, and for families caught unprepared, the pain will be immediate. But those who build small reserves now will feel a cushion beneath them when shelves are sparse or prices unbearable. This does not mean hoarding or panic buying. It means thoughtful storage shelves of staples like rice, beans, pasta, canned vegetables, dried fruits, oats, nuts, and preserved meats. Foods that last, that provide nutrition that can be cooked simply. Cooking habits matter too. Learning to prepare meals that require less fuel and fewer ingredients can transform limited supplies into satisfying nourishment. Soups, stews, and rice-based dishes stretch resources further than processed meals. Families who cook together also discover something deeper. The act of creating sustenance with their own hands becomes a ritual of care, a reminder that even in scarcity, love flavors every bite. Another powerful act of preparation lies in water and preservation. While many do not think of water shortages in winter, frozen pipes or overwhelmed systems can disrupt supply. Storing a small reserve of drinking water, learning how to safely melt snow if needed, and preparing for sanitation needs can prevent emergencies from spiraling into crises. Preserving food through drying, canning, or freezing extends the life of groceries purchased when prices are lower. These skills, once common in past generations, can return now as lifelines. Beyond the practical, communication within families may be the most overlooked form of preparation. When parents hide struggles from children, children sense fear but lack understanding, which often creates more anxiety than the truth. But when families speak openly, explaining why certain changes are happening, why the house is cooler, why meals look different, why outings of fewer children adapt with less fear, they feel included, trusted, and part of the team. This transforms preparation from a burden carried by parents alone into a collective effort where everyone contributes. Even small responsibilities given to children, helping to conserve electricity, learning to cook simple meals, assisting in storing supplies, teach resilience. These moments become lessons that last long after the season ends, shaping young people into adults who know how to face challenge without crumbling. And for parents, involving children lightens the weight of isolation. It reminds them that survival is not theirs to carry alone, but a family achievement. Communities must also take preparation seriously. Families who coordinate with neighbors create strength far greater than what each household could achieve alone. Sharing tools, pooling food when shortages strike, checking on vulnerable neighbors, all these acts prevent suffering from multiplying. A single generator shared wisely can provide warmth and safety for many. A single garden, cared for by a group, can supplement meals for several families. A single neighborhood watch, checking in during storms or outages, can prevent tragedy. This is why conversations must begin now, before the cold deepens. Neighbors must ask each other what resources they can share, what plans they can build together, what vulnerabilities they need to watch for. The elderly couple who cannot shovel their driveway may rely on younger neighbors. The family with more food can support the family with more firewood. The parent who knows how to repair things can offer skills in exchange for shared supplies. These exchanges are not charity. They are cooperation. They are survival at its most human. And beyond resources, communities must also prepare emotionally. Loneliness is a silent threat in winter, especially when hardship isolates families. But when communities build rituals, shared meals, group check-ins, collective projects, they replace loneliness with belonging. Even in the darkest nights, knowing that someone will knock on your door to check if you're safe can be the difference between despair and hope. The resilience of a community is not measured by how well its strongest members endure. It is measured by how well it protects its weakest. And this winter will reveal which communities have built true resilience and which have allowed division, selfishness, and silence to leave too many unprotected. I often imagine the stories that will be told years from now. Some will speak of how they suffered because they were unprepared, because they assumed that comfort would last forever. Others will speak of how they endured because they made small, wise choices in advance, because they talked openly, because they shared, because they prepared. Which story each family tells will be written not by the severity of the season, but by the steps they take today. So as you listen, reflect on what you can do now. Maybe it feels too small to matter. Maybe sealing a window or storing a few bags of rice feels insignificant compared to the size of the challenge. But survival is not built from one grand act. It is built from thousands of small acts, repeated consistently, chosen deliberately, and those small acts are within your power here and now. The storm is coming, the hardships are real, but so is your ability to act. And the choice you make to ignore or to prepare will echo through every cold night, every shared meal, every moment when your family looks to you for safety. Preparation becomes real only when it translates into daily choices. Awareness alone cannot keep a home warm, cannot keep a family fed, cannot sustain a community under pressure. What matters is how that awareness shapes action-specific, deliberate, and consistent action. And these actions, though sometimes small, accumulate into shields that can protect families when the pressure rises. Energy is often the first battleground. Heating a home consumes more resources in winter than almost anything else. Many believe they cannot control their bills because the prices are set by systems beyond their reach. But the truth is, even small adjustments create meaningful differences. Insulating windows and doors to prevent drafts may seem like a simple act, but it reduces heat loss dramatically, cutting costs over weeks and months. Lowering thermostats just 2 or 3 degrees and relying on blankets or layered clothing can save more fuel than people expect. Families who prepare early by repairing leaks, sealing gaps, and ensuring their heating systems are efficient will face the cold with more confidence and fewer shocks. Electricity, too, requires vigilance. Swapping inefficient bulbs for LEDs, unplugging appliances that drain power silently, turning off lights in unused rooms, these are not symbolic gestures. Over time, they can reduce the burden on fragile grids and keep bills within reach. And when outages come, as they inevitably will for some, having flashlights, batteries, and portable chargers ready turns chaos into manageable inconvenience. Families who prepare in this way do not panic in darkness. They light a lamp, gather together, and wait with calm. Food preparation is equally essential. Prices will climb, availability will tighten, and for families caught unprepared, the pain will be immediate. But those who build small reserves now will feel a cushion beneath them when shelves are sparse or prices unbearable. This does not mean hoarding or panic buying. It means thoughtful storage shelves of staples like rice, beans, pasta, canned vegetables, dried fruits, oats, nuts, and preserved meats. Foods that last, that provide nutrition, that can be cooked simply. Cooking habits matter too. Learning to prepare meals that require less fuel and fewer ingredients can transform limited supplies into satisfying nourishment. Soups, stews, and rice-based dishes stretch resources further than processed meals. Families who cook together also discover something deeper. The act of creating sustenance with their own hands becomes a ritual of care, a reminder that even in scarcity, love flavors every bite. Another powerful act of preparation lies in water and preservation. While many do not think of water shortages in winter, frozen pipes or overwhelmed systems can disrupt supply. Storing a small reserve of drinking water, learning how to safely melt snow if needed, and preparing for sanitation needs can prevent emergencies from spiraling into crises. Preserving food through drying, canning, or freezing extends the life of groceries purchased when prices are lower. These skills, once common in past generations, can return now as lifelines. Beyond the practical, communication within families may be the most overlooked form of preparation. When parents hide struggles from children, children sense fear but lack understanding, which often creates more anxiety than the truth. But when families speak openly, explaining why certain changes are happening, why the house is cooler, why meals look different, why outings are fewer, children adapt with less fear. They feel included, trusted, and part of the team. This transforms preparation from a burden carried by parents alone into a collective effort where everyone contributes. Even small responsibilities given to children, helping to conserve electricity, learning to cook simple meals, assisting in storing supplies, teach resilience. These moments become lessons that last long after the season ends, shaping young people into adults who know how to face challenge without crumbling. And for parents, involving children lightens the weight of isolation. It reminds them that survival is not theirs to carry alone, but a family achievement. Communities must also take preparation seriously. Families who coordinate with neighbors create strength far greater than what each household could achieve alone. Sharing tools, pooling food when shortages strike, checking on vulnerable neighbors, all these acts prevent suffering from multiplying. A single generator shared wisely can provide warmth and safety for many. A single garden, cared for by a group, can supplement meals for several families. A single neighborhood watch, checking in during storms or outages, can prevent tragedy. This is why conversations must begin now, before the cold deepens. Neighbors must ask each other what resources they can share, what plans they can build together, what vulnerabilities they need to watch for. The elderly couple who cannot shovel their driveway may rely on younger neighbors. The family with more food can support the family with more firewood. The parent who knows how to repair things can offer skills in exchange for shared supplies. These exchanges are not charity. They are cooperation. They are survival at its most human. And beyond resources, communities must also prepare emotionally. Loneliness is a silent threat in winter, especially when hardship isolates families. But when communities build rituals, shared meals, group check-ins, collective projects, they replace loneliness with belonging. Even in the darkest nights, knowing that someone will knock on your door to check if you're safe can be the difference between despair and hope. The resilience of a community is not measured by how well its strongest members endure. It is measured by how well it protects its weakest. And this winter will reveal which communities have built true resilience and which have allowed division, selfishness, and silence to leave too many unprotected. I often imagine the stories that will be told years from now. Some will speak of how they suffered because they were unprepared, because they assumed that comfort would last forever. Others will speak of how they endured because they made small, wise choices in advance, because they talked openly, because they shared, because they prepared. Which story each family tells will be written not by the severity of the season, but by the steps they take today. So as you listen, reflect on what you can do now. Maybe it feels too small to matter. Maybe sealing a window or storing a few bags of rice feels insignificant compared to the size of the challenge. But survival is not built from one grand act. It is built from thousands of small acts, repeated consistently, chosen deliberately, and those small acts are within your power here and now.